Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. So, this week I sat down and chatted with Laura from Millennial Stepmom. And honestly, it was like sitting down and having a conversation with an old friend. Now, this episode is 100% for the stepmoms. And stepmom, I know you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. We chat about how to develop a positive relationship with the ex, stepmom struggles, how being a stepkid influenced how Laura shows up as a stepmom, when being the bigger person pays off, and how our childhood trauma has influenced how we show up as adults. I know you are going to love Laura just as much as I do, so you know what? Let's just cut to the chase and dive right in. Hey guys, it's Jamie Scrimger here, second wife, stepmom of 3, and mom of 1. And you're listening to my podcast, where we talk about all things motherhood, stepmotherhood, and living a kick-ass life. If you're ready for raw and real conversations and are striving to live your very best life, then you are in the right place. Every week, I'll provide you with tips and strategies and mindset shifts to inspire you to live your own version of a kick-ass life, while bringing you along as I create my own. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here chatting with you.
I know. I'm so excited. You know, we were just kind of talking offline. It feels like I know you. I've been following your Instagram for a while and we've been reading each other's posts, but we actually have never met in real life. It's like the stepmom connection through online, right?
So true. And it's funny. I even feel like right now we're just like sitting next to each other, even though we're like literally in different countries.
I know. If it wasn't morning here, I feel like we should be having our call over a glass of wine.
Seriously, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And, you know, the other piece I do want to, before we dive into all the things that you've got going on and the messages that you have for the community, we were just talking about how we have connected as stepmoms with so many phenomenal women online. And people often ask me, how did you meet stepmom friends? Like, how do you have such a supportive network? And all of it came from this online community and just connecting with people through Instagram and through different hashtags and that kind of thing. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling like you are alone and like you don't have anyone who understands how tough this gig can be, the internet is your friend. You are going to meet a lot of really great people if you just kind of put yourself out there in this space. And I think that you can kind of speak to that as well.
Absolutely. As we had been talking offline, I met some awesome stepmoms online. I've met you, and I feel like it's really helped just with, you know, coping with being a stepmom. I mean, I hate to use that word coping, but adjusting would probably be more accurate, and just being able to relate to other situations and connecting with the community. But some of my friendships that I've developed over the last 2 years through Instagram it's incredible. And I love promoting that. I love encouraging other stepmoms to meet other stepmoms through your page, through my page. It's a great community.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. Now, before we dive into the community that you're building, tell me about you and your family. What do you got going on?
So I live in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I have a stepson who is going to be 11 next week. I can't believe time flies. I've been a stepmom for almost 8 years now, happily married to my husband, Brian, and we have 2 dogs, Ollie and Pepper, who are very domineering in our family dynamic too. And yeah, that's our little family.
That's amazing. And so what is your relationship like with your stepson's mom?
So in the beginning, I would say that it started off more disconnected, not for any particular high conflict reason. It was just that I was having not trouble, but I needed time processing my role and establishing my role. And so I didn't really reach out to her directly. I kind of spoke through my husband to her. And we met briefly 8 years ago, kind of by chance, actually. They were doing a drop off and I just happened to be there. And we're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And so it started off a little awkward, but then as time went on, it's gotten better. And I think a lot of that has to do with me. To give her credit, she has always been very positive towards me, and she's always given me the benefit of the doubt. And I feel like we've gotten to this point now where literally last weekend, she had asked me, and I wrote about this. She asked me if I could take my stepson to his hockey game on the Cape, which is about an hour and a half from us. So I could do her a favor because she was having this annual Oktoberfest party. And I was like, sure, because I didn't have anything going on. And why not? I love watching my stepson play hockey. So, and then she was like, you know what? I'll have a drink waiting for you when you get back because I know it's a trip. So I came back. The party was actually so much fun. And her and I hung out the whole time. I ended up staying for like 4 hours. We chit chatted. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, I could see us being friends had we not been in this complicated situation if we just met by chance. So we are now at this point where we can actually hang out. And going back to what I said before, it's never been a high conflict situation. It just was tense in the beginning. And that's mostly because of me, my insecurities. And it took me a while to realize that. It took a lot of time.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You do really have to let time do its thing in these situations. Why do you think it's so difficult for stepmoms to find their role in their stepchildren's life and like just their role in the family?
I think personally, it's this conflicting mental state where you're like, am I the mom? Am I the girlfriend? Who am I? And I think you feel this sense of urge to be the mom because at your house, that's kind of the role you take on. You may be changing diapers, you may be packing lunches, you may be taking your child to play dates. And I think that instinctively as women, we fall into that role. Like we're like, okay, I'm the mom now. But then you have to pass that on to their biological mother the other half the time or 25% of the time or 70. And you have to kind of let go of that role. So then next thing you know, you're not the mom anymore. You're just the girlfriend or just, and I say just meaning like that's how a lot of stepmoms express it. I'm just the girlfriend or I'm just the wife, but I don't have children. And I think it's just conflicting in that because instinctively we want to be the mom. And it's kind of, we have to pull ourselves back in the stepmom role. And it takes time to learn that. And I think it's mostly through experience, but it's also through kind of stepping outside yourself and looking at your dynamic and saying, what can I do to be happy in this role, but also to not disrupt or overstep with boundaries and with the relationship of my husband's ex.
Yeah, it is so hard. And it seems like it's such it feels like an unnatural role because you naturally as a woman just have these, this urge to be the caretaker and to, these maternal instincts. And then you have them and you implement them in your own home. And then you have to pull it back. So it's like this ping pong back and forth, kind of figuring out where you fit and where you should stay. And it's just, I even find now, we're 8 years into almost. And it's like sometimes I feel like I've totally got it figured out. And then something happens and I'm like, no, I don't. It's another situation where you feel like you need to pivot.
It's so true. And it's not always perfect. And I always say, I've gotten through so much in the last 8 years. I've learned so much and I've gotten so comfortable in my role. But there are times when I still, I miss my stepson when he's not here. I feel like, oh, I wish I could have done Halloween with him this year. Or I kind of feel like deep down a little bit, I kind of, wish that I took him to the water park and on the day that he just had this great time with his mom. And that's nothing against her. That's just me wanting to share in that experience. And then sometimes, you get a little bit of insecurities, but I will say, and I know you've talked about this so much, Jamie, that time really does heal a lot. And that is so true because I feel from my personal experiences, because it's just helped me where when I get upset about these things, it's just a brief moment and then it kind of passes. And it's not as often anymore. And I think it goes along with just like kind of like what we were saying. It's about being human and it's a unique role that isn't natural.
I love that you said that because people will say, how did you get to this place where you don't let things bother you or you don't get triggered anymore? And I'm like, I'm not at that place. I don't know what you're talking about. I still get triggered. I still have stressors. We still have things happen. But it's like you said, it feels like it hurts or it stings for a shorter period of time. It knocks you down for a shorter period of time. Like you have that ability to bounce back in a quicker way as time goes on. So it's not perfect. You just aren't as affected as you were at the beginning.
Right, exactly. And another thing just to add off on that is I always like to mention everybody, the grass is not greener on the other side. A lot of times, a lot of stepmoms get these outside pressures from people that say, why don't you just, go for the relationship with somebody who doesn't have all this baggage and it'd be so much easier. And I always say traditional relationships and families have struggles as well. It's not easy for them either. It's a different type of hardship for some, but it doesn't mean you're going to be happier in that situation. It's just a totally different dynamic. And so I feel like comparison is another thing that stepmoms, we do a lot. And I don't think it's helpful. I think it's the opposite.
Yeah, everyone has their shit in life. Like everyone has their challenges, and this is ours. This is our challenge. And at the end of the day, you would have, another challenge if you didn't marry a man with kids. Maybe you had like a mother-in-law you have to deal with, or there's an illness in the family, or financial issues. Like everyone is dealing with something.
Exactly. It's very true.
Now, on your Instagram, you talk about how you first struggled with understanding why your husband would act the way he did with his ex. And you referred to him, he was like calm and friendly, and he wouldn't confront her if he disagreed about something. Can you tell me what that looked like for you?
So I really feel like I have to dive back into sort of the past with that, in terms of why I felt the way I did. I think that my husband was very mature in his approach, and I actually think it's incredible how he acted and dealt with his divorce, because he was so amicable. He was so considerate of his ex and considerate of his son. But I think that naturally, because my parents had such a turbulent separation, I witnessed so much fighting, so much animosity, that when I fell into the role as stepmom, my instinct was to say, well, what are we getting out of this? Why do we want to help her? What are we getting? We're going to switch this weekend, but that's less time we're going to have with my stepson. So, why are we being so nice? Why are we being so easygoing about this? And well, if she wants that, well, why? And I think that it stemmed from my past and everything I had witnessed as a stepchild. And I think that I was kind of pushing that was coming to the surface when I first fell into the stepmom role. And so it took a lot of learning. And I think that Brian, my husband, taught me a lot just by, saying, well, what if we need a favor? And isn't it better for him, for Sam, for my stepson, if we get along with her, if we, allow for these changes to go forward? Because what are we going to get out of it if we don't? Like it's just going to be problems for us. It's just going to be fighting and conflict. And I think that I just had to be in the role to kind of see the big picture. And I think he helped me a lot with that.
Yeah, you're playing the long game, right? That's the big
Right.
message there.
Exactly.
Now, so you talk about being a stepdaughter twice. So growing up, your parents were divorced and then your dad remarried.
Yes. So my mom and my dad first separated, and got divorced when I was around age 7. And it was very violent in a way. I mean, throwing pots and pans, screaming, yelling, slamming doors. And my dad soon after married my first stepmom. And my mom was just so angry. She would tell us that my stepmother was the reason they split, that we weren't allowed to love her, that our life was being ruined because of this woman, and that if she wasn't in the picture, that they would get back together. It was very toxic. And I don't think that my first stepmom left for that reason. I just don't think that her and my dad were compatible. And they've actually ended up divorcing. And at the same time that they split, my mom was actually battling with alcoholism, and she disappeared for a couple of years. So it went from this high conflict situation with mom, stepmom, dad, to stepmom's gone, mom's gone, and I'm just with dad. And then several years go by. My dad, at one point, he actually said, "I'm never getting married again," which was like the famous last words. So next thing you know, I'm 15. My dad meets another woman, and very fast track, 4 months, they meet, they get engaged, they get married. And next thing you know, her children are moving into the house with us. And I have two stepsisters, a stepson living with us, my brother, my grandfather, a full house of people. And I'm 15, teen angst. And the last thing in the world I want is another stepmom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I hear that.
And I think that I was a nightmare, but I think that she also wasn't equipped to dealing with me at the same time because I had so many issues from all this trauma that I had faced. And being 15, as we know, is not easy in itself. So that together with having all this past trauma and then welcoming this new woman, this new mother figure into my life, and I was just rejecting it any way that I could.
Yeah, you know what? And I can totally relate to that because I have talked about this before. My dad never remarried, but he did have a few girlfriends. And I say a few, and there was more than a few, but they would come in, he would have relationships for, 2 years, 2.5 years. And I do think that these women, there was only one that I look back and was like, yeah, you were a good stepmom figure. Like you were great to us. They really taught me a lot about being a stepmom because I think back to all the things that they did that drove me nuts. And I'm like, I will never do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. I talk about my first stepmom a lot as being kind of someone who really taught me how to be a stepmom, just like you were just saying. And it's sometimes I was actually hesitant talking about it because I'm thinking, well, the stepmom community is going to say, well, they split up, so how could it have been that successful? But I like to make a note that they didn't split up because of my mom. It was for just the fact that they were not really a good match. It was other issues. But I think that she helped shape my role in a way because no matter how much my mom said bad things about her and was so disruptive to her and my dad's life, she never budged once. And what I say by that is she never said one bad thing about my mother to us. And that stuck with me forever. Like I remember that she never said a bad thing. She only spoke positively. She dug deep down and found the most positive things or the least positive things she could find and would just use that to describe my mother in daily life. And she would always give my mom the benefit of the doubt, surprisingly. And I was like, wow, this woman's a warrior.
Now, did you realize that as a kid, or is it now when you're looking back and as an adult, you're like, wow?
I didn't realize it as a kid. I realized it now because when I think back to how high conflict my mother was. And my memories as a child were her angry all the time, angry, yelling, speaking badly about my father. And here was my stepmom who was nothing but positive. I mean, she had made a comment actually to me. We had reconnected recently. And she said that I used to hold her hand so tightly when my mom would pick me up because I didn't want to leave. Like I wanted to just stay with my stepmom. And it's because my stepmom, by not caving to this high conflict, she provided a calm and balanced childhood for me that made it feel safe. So I felt safe with her, whereas I didn't with my mom.
Oh my gosh. And I'm sure that hearing that is so invaluable for so many of the stepmoms who are listening to this right now, because I know there's so many people who struggle being the bigger person, still not retaliating, not engaging in the BS. And I always remind stepmoms, kids are going to grow up and they are going to look back with an adult perspective. They won't be kids forever, and they will see what you did and what you went through, and they will make their own opinions as an adult. And you're a prime example of that.
It's so true. And I always say that children never forget. They really don't. I mean, I feel like I remember everything, the good and the bad from my childhood. And I I completely agree with you in that. It's so important to focus on the fact that these kids are going to grow up one day, and they're going to be the ones who are going to judge us on how we
Mm-hmm.
did and how our parents did, and and how their parents did, and that is going to be the ultimate factor. So it's important to think ahead, and to think about them, and that's kind of where I get a lot of my material, and where I come up with a lot of my talking points with advising other stepmoms.
Yeah, because and it's an important message, and it's important, like you're saying, to look at that big picture. And I think sometimes that's what makes being a stepmom so difficult is we're dealing with these emotions that we really never saw coming. And in our head, we know how we should be acting and reacting, but the emotional reaction is a whole different ballgame.
For sure, absolutely.
Now, when you think back to, are there anything from your childhood that stepmom figure would do that you're like, I'm never going to do that. Like that made you be like, you know what, that is not how I'm going to show up.
Absolutely. And I would say it's for my second stepmom. So, going forward to fast forwarding to age 15, she was a hardworking woman who was kind of like no BS. And this is how I run the house. This is what my children do and how they are. And I expect you to be the exact same way. And what I kind of took from that was that now, because it's so backfired with me, is that none of the kids are the same and they don't all require the same things. And one day I plan to have children of my own someday, hopefully. And I am going to think about that when that day comes, because the things that they need may not be the same things my stepson needed or needs. And I think that, especially with blending two families together, both sides have such different upbringings, most likely, even though they come from divorce. You have to kind of address each child separately and their needs separately. And I think sometimes everybody having this sort of uniformed idea for the children in the house can not always work. So that's kind of caused me to really think deep down and say, like, I'm not going to do that. The other thing too was I felt as a teenager that there was a lot of favoritism, I guess, for her children it was kind of like, these are my kids and those are your kids. So it wasn't a united front as a household. And I think it was because of the quickness of the blending of the two sides, but also how her and my dad actually together went about parenting all of us.
Hey guys, all right, I'm just going to interrupt this podcast for about 2 seconds here because I just want to make sure that all of the stepmoms know about the exclusive community for stepmoms that I just launched. So as most of you know, I write blog posts and post videos all about my experiences as a stepmom and about our blended family life. I keep it positive, but I don't sugarcoat the challenges, and I'm really here to provide stepmoms with tips and strategies so that they can show up as the best stepmom possible. I have an online Facebook group, a public Facebook page, and I'm all over Instagram. And guys, I cannot tell you how many times stepmoms have reached out to me and told me that they really want to engage with my content, but they don't want their husband's ex-wife or their mother-in-law or anyone in their life to see that they're struggling. They don't want their stepkids to stumble across their posts, and I totally understand that. I also have had so many stepmoms say that they've posted on my page or in my group, and then someone in their life has literally taken a screenshot and sent it to people in their family, which, by the way, I think is so brutal, but that's what happens with social media. It's not private. Anyone can see anything, and the internet is forever, even in closed Facebook groups. So knowing that so many stepmoms were struggling and craving that online interaction, but weren't comfortable doing it on social media, I decided to launch an exclusive community for stepmoms. In this community, you get exclusive content that's not shared anywhere else, regular interaction with me and my team, a monthly Q&A where you can ask me anything and everything, and unfiltered conversations, all with the purpose of providing you with tips and strategies and a community so that you can show up as the best stepmom possible. And guys, it is all off social media. Even the forum is like a Facebook group, but not on Facebook. it is a private community that only members can access. So if you are craving privacy and support and friendship, and you just want to feel like you're not freaking crazy for feeling the way that you do, check out my online community. All the details are at www.jamiescrimger.com/membership. Now, was there anything that you remember from when you were introduced to either of your stepmoms that made you reevaluate how you met your stepson?
Absolutely. I met both of them, like, this may not be 100% accurate, but it feels like I met them on day one and day two, they were living with me. It wasn't that close together, but for my second stepmom, she was, like I had said before, she was, they met and then 4 months later married, living with us. It's a very short period. And I actually have to give my husband a lot of credit. When he and I first started dating, my stepson was very little. He was 2.5. And he would actually show him photos of me and kind of was like, this is my friend Laura. This is what we did this weekend. And would just talk about me, kind of just to like introduce me. And then we met, we started to spend some time together, and it kind of slowly progressed into the idea of me coming into this family. It wasn't a total shock. And that's not to judge other stepmoms or other blended families for the way they did it. But from the contrast of what I had experienced to what my husband and I did, was a huge difference. And I feel like it was a lot better the way that for us and the way that we did it, because my stepson we have such a close bond. And I think that the way my husband introduced us was really, and the slowness that he kind of went about it was really effective.
Yeah. And I think it's so important when you're doing that is to take your cues from the kids too, right? Pick up on how they respond to the pictures or to the conversations, or when you meet them for the first time. Like, doing that and really being empathetic to the child's perspective can go such a long way.
For sure, because one thing that we tend to forget, and that's just we as in a whole, is that divorce and separation for children is very traumatic. It's their comfort zone, their life as they know it is suddenly disrupted and completely different. So to introduce new parents to that, I feel like you have to go about it the right way for your family to make it work, because you don't want them to suffer for the decisions that we make. It sounds kind of, it's a strong statement, but it's reality sometimes.
No, and it's so true, because as I became an adult and, Darren and I got together and we start, we get married, we're forging our relationship, like creating our life together. I started to realize how much my parents' divorce and the trauma that I went through as a kid affected how I was showing up in my relationship and as a parent. And I would have never, ever until that point realized that it was trauma, or that it did affect me the way it did. And I forget exactly what it's called, but I think it's called the sleeper effect in children of divorce. And it's more prominent in females, is that the effects of the divorce don't actually come to the surface until young adulthood.
It's so true. And Jamie, I had such similar experiences with that. To be honest, a couple years ago, and I know I've talked openly about depression and anxiety, and I know you have on your page, which is awesome for everyone suffering with that. But I had bottled down so much trauma for such a long time. I kind of took this like stern approach where I'm just going to keep going with my life and forget about the past. What happened was at around age 25, next thing I know, I'm at work and I start having a panic attack and I have to leave. And I start having these reoccurring panic attacks. And I decided to go back to therapy and deal with the issues, which I'm still in now. And I talk about how much I love therapy, and it's so important. If you need it, I feel like everyone could use it. But
I love therapy.
But having bottled that in for so long, for so many years, it just exploded to the surface. And I just kept having panic attacks. It started once every couple of weeks, and then it started happening twice a week. I was running home from work, getting in bed under my covers and just like sleeping, because that's the only thing I could do to like make it go away. It wasn't the stereotypical issues with breathing, and it was more of kind of like a spiraling thoughts that I would have of worry. And I learned how to deal with it through therapy, which has been my savior. But lesson learned is that, bottling up trauma is not healthy. It's always going to end up coming back, and working through it is the better option.
Yeah, for sure. And we often hear parents say, kids are resilient. Kids are resilient. They'll bounce back. They're totally fine. It's like, okay, let's stop for a second and stop playing the resilient card and think about how we as parents are impacting the lives of our kids. Because just saying that they're resilient and they'll be fine when you're implementing all of this change in their lives, it's not doing anyone any favors, because it is making an impact on them. And maybe you don't see it right now, but as they get older, it is going to show up.
Right. It shows up. And I think that a lot of times parents convince themselves as well. Like, we convince our children, oh, you're fine, you're going to get through this. And, then when they might be fine for a couple of years, but then, a lot of times in their teen years, especially, I always hear stepmoms talk about everything was great with my stepdaughter, stepson, and then 14, 15. I hear that age so much. That's when the problem started. That's when the acting out started. And I feel like a lot of times it's a cry for help, but they don't know how to express it because they're going through a tough time of adolescence themselves. And that's when we really have to check in on our kids and say, wait a minute, are you okay? And it may not be asking them directly. It may be indirectly, but you have to check in on them because they're going through this life change that is coming through later in life.
Yeah. And we normalize divorce so much, right? And when people are getting divorced and kids' lives are being, totally changed, we're like, oh no, it's fine. It's common now. Divorce is the norm. And I think it's important to just check and be like, how are you doing? And give the kids permission to feel like their world's been rocked or to feel like this is affecting them and be fine with that. Like, let them know that it's totally okay. I know I have told both my oldest stepkids, my parents' divorce rocked me and I didn't realize how much it screwed me up until I became an adult. And I tell them that. Like, I'm straight up and say, like, it is okay that your stuff will creep up and you can own it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of.
And that honesty with them, I feel, is so important and just makes you an awesome stepmom. I've been doing the same with my stepson since he was younger, just kind of allowing him to feel comfort in that I know the feeling that he's going through. I've been through it myself. And a lot of times we would have conversations where I would say that to him and he would say, really? Oh, okay. And then he would ask more. And I also think, we have an advantage, you and I, because we've gone through this, we can kind of help our stepkids because we can relate to them. Whereas I don't know if you did, but I certainly didn't have that growing up. I didn't have one adult figure in my life that had gone through a divorce or had been a stepchild, not one.
No, and I definitely don't think that my parents realized how much it affected us. Like, even to this day, I don't think either of them listened to this, so it's totally fine, but I would say it even if they did. But even to this day, I know that when we talk about the divorce or if we talk about our memories or things that have affected us, my siblings and I, our parents don't get it. They kind of have, like, my mom will give a little bit of a, oh, really? Like, come on, get over it. Like, when are you going to let it go? Or things like that. And it's like, no, we have to recognize that things that happen in our childhood affect us into our adulthood. Like, let's just call a spade here. Like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. This happens.
It's so true. And I feel like there's this sort of idea that because it's in the past, then we should just, how are we still bothered by that? That happened so long ago. You're happily married now, Laura. You should be fine. There should be no issues. And it's like, but you don't understand what happens when you face that because you guys were the adults and I was the child. So yeah, I definitely think there's kind of a lack of understanding on their part.
Yeah. I know even when Darren and I were first together, so it was 2 years, 3 years, and there was this part of me that kept being like, this is too good to be true. This is too good to be true. This is too normal. He's going to leave. And that's where I had a lot of control issues. And I couldn't figure out where my control, like, I really liked things to be the way that I thought they were going to be. I didn't like surprises, didn't like flexibility, because I really liked to know what's next. And after going through therapy, I realized that that was because of my childhood. I tried to control things to avoid having that same trauma and abandonment issues happen to me again. And it creeped its way into our relationship until one day he looked at me, he's like, I'm not leaving you. I will never leave you. And I think sometimes when you have that childhood that's, for lack of better words, so screwed up that you almost don't think you're worthy of normal.
It's so true. And I just, all I can say is that's so relatable. I had that fear for so long. Like one day Brian is going to get up and be like, I'm done with her. Like, that's it. I'm walking out. And if you think about it, it makes sense that we would have those fears or that anxiety because that's what we witnessed our parents do. I mean, to a degree, they walked out on each other, but I had this memory of when my mom and my dad had like their final fight that was like they're separating. And my dad went to go spend the night at his parents'. And I remember him walking out and me being like, where are you going? And I remember feeling like he was never going to come back. Like I thought that was the last time I was going to see my dad forever. And it was reality that they had just had a fight, but I still feel like that today. And I think it's easy when you experience that in your own insecurities, to project that into your own relationship to a degree. I mean, at some point in your life, and it's good to work through that, obviously. But it definitely has the past coming up to the surface.
Yeah, so true. Wow, we are like the same person.
I know, we so are, and that's why I love your blog.
Yeah, and that's why I love your Instagram, because I'm like reading my own captions, and
I know I'm like yes.
your platform is like therapy for me.
Yours is too. I'm like, oh, and I love the strength that you project out through your blog too. Like, it's like, sometimes I read it and I'm like, oh, good, I can do this. Like, I can have strength in my day, and Jamie did it. I can do it. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's not always so strong. I have to pep talk myself too. So that's kind of where all that comes from. Now, what do you find most challenging about being a stepmom right now?
So what I find most challenging at this point in my life is actually the outside stigma and the outside factors from other people. So, and what I mean by that is, for example, last weekend, actually at the Oktoberfest party, I, at one moment, had been talking to another parent that was there, and she had said, how do you guys get along? And like, it was almost like in a judgy tone. And it's not to speak badly about her. It's just the way that her tone was. Like, she was expecting me to be like, oh yeah, we don't get along, or say something disparaging almost. And I think that the biggest challenge is that society expects us to say that we're in this bad situation. They're like expecting it to be bad. They're expecting our relationships with the exes to be bad. And I feel like it takes away from the fact that from the thought process that no, actually we have a good relationship, and there are other families out there that are doing the same thing we are, and it is positive. So I think the stigma of the stepmom and the step parent is the most challenging, and I feel the need to have to always over-explain that we get along, over-explain that we co-parent well, and explain our dynamic. I can't just be like, "Hi, I'm the stepmom picking up my stepson." It's like, yeah, I'm a stepmom and I really like my husband's ex and we get along great. And I think society is really the challenge at this point.
Yeah, I think society has pit us against each other before we've even met. Like, there is this assumption that there's the turf war drama, or there's the pissing match between the mom and the stepmom. And I really think that comes from the fact that they feel like there can only be one mother figure, right? Or that the stepmoms are trying to overstep. And it comes down to, like, there's room for everyone in these kids' lives. Like, the stepmom doesn't need to try to be the mom. She can be okay with being the stepmom. And that's a great role and an important role too.
Absolutely. And I always say, establish your own role, because exactly like what you just said, there can never be too many parents. It's like, it's like saying that there's too many grandparents or too many aunts and uncles and too many parental figures. There can never be too many. There can never be too much love for a child. And I think that society still has a long way to go with accepting this idea of step parents, and that they're here to help and to be a part of this child's life.
Yeah, we're all on the same team.
Exactly.
So if you could give one piece of advice for our stepmoms, what would it be?
My one piece of advice would be to take a deep breath, trust, and actually, I guess it's going to be a couple things. Take a deep breath, trust in your partner to be able to handle the tough situations, and just know that things do get better with time. And that role that you may be struggling with your identity in this family will come to fruition with time. Time is the big factor in learning who to be and how to be in your life, and to find your happiness within your family.
Oh my gosh, so good and so true. Thank you so much, Laura. I could sit here and chat with you for hours. We're going to have to do this again.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, so I'm going to link your Instagram and all things Millennial Stepmom for my community. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
Okay, guys, if you like this podcast, please do me a little favor. Take a second and subscribe on iTunes, and then screenshot this podcast, give it a share in social media, and tell your friends what you think. And hey, don't forget to tag me so that I can thank you for helping me spread the word. Thanks so much, and I will talk to you next week.